This is Maarte. Not quite a podcast, more like voice memos you weren't supposed to hear. So the other day, a friend and I, we were getting into this really deep chat about the fine line that people walk when it comes to honesty. And before I knew it, we were getting off the phone. I was like, dang, that was a missed opportunity to have recorded my friend and I just riffing off of this one subject, but I still had so much more to say. So I recorded a voice note, and that's what you're going to listen to today. Also, this was a day where I just talked all day long. I was like in and out of Zoom calls for most of the day, but so I'm kind of raspy. Also, highly recommend that you speed up the listening speed to like 1.5. You're welcome. There's this version of honesty people love to talk about, and it's clean. It's clean, it's admirable, it sounds good in captions on Instagram and conversations. It lets people feel self aware without actually requiring anything from them. They say things like, I'm just honest, or I say it how it is, or perhaps they even say, I value communication. And it all sounds nice, right? It sounds like it would be all pretty wrapped in a bow in a little box. It sounds all nice and honest and just right. But real honesty, it's not fucking aesthetic. It's not comfortable. It's not convenient. Because honesty does not show up when it's easy. It shows up when it costs you something. It shows up when you'd rather stay quiet, when the timing doesn't benefit you, when you haven't figured out how to soften it yet. Uh, God. When saying it out loud means you lose control of how you're perceived, that's when honesty comes out. And that's where people start to pull back because the truth is, people don't struggle with honesty at all. They actually struggle with the consequences of it. It's fucking easy to be honest if it keeps the peace or when it protects your image. And, even when it doesn't change anything, it's easy to be fucking honest. But it's much harder to be honest when it disrupts something. When it risks disappointment, when it invites conflict, when it forces you to admit your feelings have changed. That's when honesty stops being an identity, it starts becoming a decision. And that's where the difference shows. Because, and I just cannot believe, I can't even believe this is like, these are words coming out of my mouth. But there are people who really do value honesty. And on the other end of the spectrum, there are people who only value the idea of it. Because, honesty isn't just about saying what feels true in a quiet moment. It's about saying what is true when it's inconvenient, when it's uncomfortable, when it requires you to take responsibility for the impact. And most people are just not prepared for that. So instead, what they do is they delay. Delay. They soften, they reframe their words. They wait it out. They tell themselves the timing isn't right, silence is kinder, or perhaps they gaslight themselves into thinking that they're actually protecting the other person when more often than not, they're protecting themselves. They are protecting their comfort, their image, their ability to avoid being the one who disrupts something. In that avoidance, honesty gets distorted because silence is not neutral. It communicates. It creates space for confusion, for assumptions, for someone to fill in the gaps. That one right there, that one is fucking brutal. That is so brutal. When you leave someone with the quiet and you know that they know that there's something going on in that brain of yours, but you delay until it gets to the point where this person starts to try to fill in the gaps. When you hold the fucking truth When you are holding on to the truth the entire time. And when the truth finally comes out, it doesn't feel like honesty. It feels like distance. It feels like inconsistency, like something doesn't line up. You know, not because the truth is wrong, but because it was withheld. That creates a very specific kind of disorientation when someone presents themselves as open, communicative, emotionally aware, and then when it actually matters, they choose the path that requires the least amount of directness. And you and then you don't just question the moment, you start to question everything that came before it. Because consistency is what gives honesty its weight. Without it, honesty becomes selective, conditional. It becomes something that's offered when it's easy and withheld when it's not. And that's not honesty, that's comfort dressed up as integrity. Real honesty isn't about being blunt or unfiltered, it's about alignment. It's about when your words match your behavior, when your timing matches your awareness, when your willingness to speak matches when your willingness to speak matches the weight of what you actually feel. It's understanding that your discomfort doesn't exist in isolation, because when you avoid it, it usually shows up as confusion for someone else. And that's just really shitty. And that's the part that people don't like to sit with, because it means honesty isn't just personal, it's relational. And I mean, it's not just about expressing yourself, it's about it's about how and when you choose to do it, and whether you're willing to show up fully when the moment calls for it. And if we're being fucking real, most people fall short there. And it is so devastating. It is so devastating to know that people you trust and have faith in are the ones that sometimes fall short of that. Because it's easier to believe you're an honest person than it is to practice honesty when it disrupts something. It's easier to speak in generalities than to be specific. It's even easier to delay than to be direct. Maybe for you it's easier because you have this idea in your mind that hopefully it'll resolve itself, than to be the one that changes the course. But the truth is, But the truth doesn't just disappear because you avoid it, it waits. And when it finally surfaces, it reveals more than just the situation, it reveals capacity. Who is willing to step in discomfort and who is not? Who can hold both their experience and someone else's at the same time, and who avoids that weight? Because honesty, words don't mean anything. It's proven in your actions, in the moments, in your timing, in your follow through, and the willingness to say something when it would be far easier not to. That's a lot more rare than people like to admit.